Hey, so another day, another new DHQv version, or so it seems, and as you may be accustomed to by this point, I'm just going to do a quick video outlining some of the changes, which, if that isn't useful for you, don't watch this. I think it may be useful for some, just if they're interested in seeing the changes to the site, and it's certainly useful for me for personal documentation in the future. So let's get going. So pretty much this is the home page. It looks mostly the same as the last version, really. We have the navigation bar, which is pretty much exactly the same. Changed a little bit, of course. And then we have this kind of main area here, which is, again, a lot the same as it was before, to be honest. And you can see immediately we're using this new font around the site. We used to be using Ubuntu for almost everything, the Ubuntu font, and now we're using Vertigo Pro around most of the site. We also have a search bar now on this homepage bit, or you can just use to browse sort of as before. We have the block quotes before, and you can see also immediately the footer has changed from the previous version. It's a lot simpler than it was before. I figured you don't really need all that featured content stuff in the footer. It was just making the footer too big. All we really need is this message, and I've also added in some extra functionality to the footer too, as you may have seen. So we have this little button here to go to the top of the page, which of course isn't particularly useful on the home page, but in general can be very useful, especially if you're viewing on mobile. And the site is responsive. I'll show you some of that in a minute, I guess. And we also have this little random button here to go to a random tutorial, which isn't kind of particularly useful functionality, but I thought it would be a cool little thing to add in the footer, and it sort of fitted into the way I made the search functionality in the end, so it's all good. But if we go ahead and just click browse here, you can see the way things are formatted now. In general, this is how sort of a normal page looks, and you'll see that theme followed throughout sort of viewing series or viewing tutorials. I know, by the way, series isn't the correct plural, but it's a lot easier to say in my mind. So yeah, we can search here now, and it sort of searches in real time, but in general everything is now formatted with tiles, so the categories and also the standalone tutorials all show up in tiles, which are sort of color coded. You can see yellow for the categories and blue for the tutorials, so if I click one of these we'll go straight to that page, but more on this kind of page later. And of course if I click on a series, so like HTML and CSS, that'll go to that series, but first of all I guess I should just show you this search functionality. So, I don't know, if I take something like setup, you can see, hey, they've all come up because all of them pretty much have something to do with setting things up. If I go, obviously, polymorphism, then it's going to go, hey, I recommend the C++ series. But if we just go ahead and just get rid of that, we can just go ahead and check out the HTML and CSS series, just for an example of this page. Much the same, but yeah, we're using all these tiles, and every tutorial now has an associated image as well, which is kind of a nice touch. And they all work responsively as well. But if we just go an example of this, like CSS Basics, you can see, here we go, here's sort of the new tutorial view page. This is really the page around which this layout was designed. This was the first page I started with designing, and really it is the most important page on the website, the actual viewing of the tutorials. So it looks pretty nice. We're using Vertigo Pro again for the headings, and then we're using Open Sans for the regular body text. And yeah, a lot of it's kind of the same, but it's kind of different in a way that I like, and we have these different share buttons at the bottom now as well. We were using add this previously, but these are a little more integrated and a little more sort of nice and polished, I think, and we didn't need all the extra options for like sharing via email or via some other sites. I mean, some of them were used for like a Reddit share button, but in a way I think narrowing it down to these three is kind of good for the aesthetics, and a lot of people weren't using them anyway, which is fine. And we have the previous and next tutorial buttons are the same. I'm thinking of tweaking those a little bit because the arrows don't always work correctly cross-browser, but maybe we'll fix that in the future. But that's pretty much the core functionality down. I better just show you the random functionality. It works as you'd expect, as does this site-wide search here. So we can go polymorphism, and this one is a more specific search, so it's going to actually go, hey, I actually recommend this particular tutorial about polymorphism. So the two pages, the tutorials page and this specific search page, do function in different ways. I might actually have to change the placeholder text at some point. I'm not sure if site-wide search and just search kind of show that difference, but they are different. Maybe I'll change it in the future. If you have any suggestions for placeholder text for these search boxes, please tell me. But yeah, I'll just show you some of the random functionality. Oh, sorry, some of the responsive functionality. So let's just go to random tutorial. That's what I do fine. And if we just resize down, see things are pretty responsive. And we had the first little change there, which is just kind of a quick change in width of this and of the side here. We can go again, and hey, we've had now this is brought down here to sort of a new bar. Apart from that, things are much the same. We can just go down some more, and yeah, things are as you'd expect, and eventually that has to go away. And then yeah, pretty much the same. We can just keep going down, and you see the font size change there. We can just keep going down, and this is sort of the final mobile size, if you like. And I have tested on iDevices and things like that. and all is pretty much good. So yeah, that's the response of the site, and this is what I was talking about, by the way, with the error sometimes being slightly off the middle. So I might have to fix that at some point. But anyway, that's more of a personal issue rather than documenting the new site. But yeah, things are pretty much as you'd expect. It looks a lot nicer than the previous version, or at least I think it looks a lot nicer. We've had some content improvements as well. We've had some new tutorials and some revamps and improvements on some of the old tutorials, and I think it's all just a little bit more polished. The search has also been moved back to the back end, which means it's sort of using a better algorithm and it doesn't require JavaScript. And also it's allowed for this extra functionality like having random tutorials, and I've added a few more Easter eggs into the search as well, because now you can't just view your page source to find them. So brownie points to anyone who finds any of the Easter eggs that I've embedded in the search functionality there. So yeah, that's really all I have to say in this video. Sorry if it's not been terribly interesting, but I just sort of wanted to step through some of the changes to the site, and that's all I have to say for this video. Have a nice day.